Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the UCD International Offer Holders Google Hangout. We're broadcasting today from a very sunny and bright UCD. I would like to introduce myself firstly. My name is Lorraine Woods and I am the UCD Regional Manager for India. Today I have three of my colleagues from UCD International who are going to participate in our Google Hangout. So I might just ask them to introduce themselves as well. So maybe Sue, you will start.
Hi all, my name is Sue McAlinden and I'm the Regional Manager for Southeast Asia here with UCD International.
Hi everybody, I'm Cara Lusby and I'm the International Student Advisor for UCD.
Hello, my name is Mark Cox and I work on the International Admissions team.
Perfect. So thank you to our panel. Basically what we will do today is I will go through a short presentation which may answer some of your questions, but afterwards the panel will be happy to answer any questions you have about your UCD offer, if you have any questions about visas or just life in Ireland and Dublin and UCD. So please don't be shy, send in your questions, we're happy to answer any of them. So first of all, I want to just say congratulations on your offer to UCD. We are very, very much looking forward to welcome you on campus in September. So, sorry. So first of all, why choose Ireland? So at the minute you can see a nice little view of the Cliffs of Moher, which is in the west of Ireland. So I guess many of you already know some of these interesting facts about Ireland, but we might just kind of go through them quite quickly. So it's English-speaking country. We're in Europe, in the Eurozone. Voted the world's friendliest country. So a lot of people would say Irish people like to chat and talk, which is very, very much true. Ireland is also a very safe country to come and study in. So we were voted the 6th safest country recently. And also Dublin, which is very important for all of you, was voted in the top 10 best student cities in the world. So that makes it very interesting when you're coming and studying in Dublin. Now, a little bit about UCD. So why UCD? We're ranked in the top 1% of institutions worldwide. We are the largest and most international university in Ireland, and we offer the most options for students for undergraduate and postgraduate studies. We're an old institution, so we're over 160 years old, founded in 1854, and we also have one of the largest campuses in Europe. So you can see there, that's an overview of the UCD campus, so you can see lots and lots of space for students. We've actually updated the campus quite recently and opened a number of new buildings, which we might discuss later on when we're talking about facilities on campus. So for students who have offers, who have accepted their offer, there are a number of steps that you must take before you depart your home country and come to Ireland, to UCD. So we're going to go through these quite quickly, and then we might go into a little bit more depth when we're talking to the panel about any questions that you have around any of these activities. So first of all, if you haven't accepted your offer, you must accept your offer. Then the next step will be paying your tuition fees, and then you'll begin the registration process, and then you will start making your travel arrangements and booking your accommodation and ensuring that you've organised health insurance, and then you will arrive on campus for orientation week. So I guess the first step, if you haven't done it, is accepting your offer. So you may hold a conditional offer or full offer from the university. So it is very important that you accept your offer within 2 weeks or your offer may lapse. And then as part of that, you will pay your deposit when accepting your offer. The next step will be the payment of your fees. We'll go into that in a little bit more detail. There's a few different ways you can pay your fees. The most straightforward way for non-EU students would be to use the pay to study method, which is detailed on our website. So if you go to ucd.ie/international, you see that there. But we'll answer some questions on paying fees, because I know many students have questions around this further on during the session. So the next step will be your registration. So there's details there on when registration will be available to you, and you'll be logging in through your UCD Connect account. So that's something you will be detailed through email. So you will receive many emails from the university throughout the summer, and I do have to stress that it's very important that you read all of these emails in relation to paying your fees and registration and accommodation. The next step after that will be booking your travel. So you will now be looking at different options that are available to you to travel to Dublin. We do encourage you to arrive for orientation week, and for many of you it's extremely important, and your programme will dictate what date you need to be on campus for orientation. We'll speak a little bit about orientation during the session, and we'll talk about the UCD Airport Welcome, which we organise for students who are arriving into Dublin Airport. Another step that you will be taking will be booking your room. So we'll talk as well about on-campus and off-campus accommodation during the session. This is one of the many questions students will have when they're talking about moving to Ireland. So we do have a lot of details on our website, but we'll explain the process for on-campus and off-campus accommodation shortly. So then you can see here that has a little bit more information about the off-campus accommodation as well, if you don't wish to live on campus. Again, as I said, we'll go through it in detail during the session. This next slide talks a little bit about the health insurance that you will need when you're coming to Ireland. So all non-EU students must provide private health insurance. So you can contact us to see if your health insurance will cover you if you do currently have health insurance, but many students do have to purchase this. There are a number of options, and UCD does have links with insurance companies which are detailed there and are also detailed on our website, but we will go through this again if any students have any questions around this. So then this next slide has a piece about the orientation week in UCD. So the schedule that there is a sample schedule, so this is not the correct schedule as we are finalising the details of orientation. But orientation will be in the first week in September. So from around the 1st of September, this is when the overall university orientation will begin. UCD International organises many orientation events during September for students. So we will send you all of these details by email, and it will be available on our website. But one of the, I suppose, the main attractions for students is the ability to meet with other students when they arrive on campus during orientation week. So we do encourage students to attend all of the orientation events. Also, you will receive when you arrive in September is the UCD International Handbook. So this details any information that you need about the campus facilities, and also talks about the supports that are available to international students. So here you can see a piece about the international student advisor Carl Lusby, who is here with us today for the panel session. So we do encourage students, if you have any difficulties or any queries or any worries, to do come and speak to us in the international office, in particular Carl, who's available throughout the year to meet with any students. So this next slide talks a little bit about the living costs in Ireland, another question that would generally come up quite frequently with students. This is very much a guideline, so this is not a final cost for students. This is just a general information around the cost that can be associated. So this is our UCD guidelines, but it can vary depending on the accommodation you're living in, depending on what kind of lifestyle you have in Dublin. But again, this is all detailed on the website and also in the International Student Handbook. Then this next slide shows some information about working in Ireland. So we will go through this during the session, because I know a lot of students have questions around part-time employment and staying when they graduate, and looking for jobs when they finish their program. So we can answer any of those questions that you have. But if you go to the website, you'll see information there on that too. So I guess just to draw your attention to the UCD International website, if you haven't already looked at it, there is a very detailed section on coming to Ireland, which will showcase all of the information that you need before arrival and then also after arrival in Dublin. So I would encourage students to have a look at this and read the information there, because many of their questions can be answered by going through the website. Also, we do have a very good Facebook page and Twitter page where you can follow us and find out all of the information, up-to-date information about orientation and pre-arrival. I would also encourage you to join the incoming International Students Facebook group also. So you'll see the link to that on our website and our general Facebook page. This is a good place for students to connect with other students, and already there are students there chatting about arriving in September. So I would encourage you to have a look at that. And then also you will see the YouTube link as well for the UCD International YouTube page. Here you will see videos about orientation and the airport arrival. So again, just another useful resource for you before you arrive in September. Then I guess just to kind of draw your attention to the UCD International office, we are open Monday to Friday, all day, every day. So if you do have any questions when you arrive in September, please feel free to come in and talk with a member of staff. Of course, you can always go to your school and program office if you have any specific questions about your program. But we definitely encourage students to participate in all of the orientation events and to come into the office if you do have any questions. So that's kind of it for the presentation. That was a very brief presentation, but please, if you have any questions, please send them in. And I think we're going to start with a few questions that have already come in for some students. So let me just check this. So I have one question from a student in Zambia, and Chama is his name, so thank you very much for your question. So Chama's question is, I live in Zambia and I want to have my documents verified when I arrive in Ireland, after which I hope to begin my registration. Is this doable, and how early should I come to do this without too much of a hurry? So this, I guess, is around maybe visa question and then also verifying documents.
Well, just to answer, maybe Carl, do you want to start
with the visa piece, because it's important, if you haven't already started the application process for your visa, that you do so as quickly as possible. It's when you're making an application, be very clear in the way that you make it and reference back to the documents that you're attaching with the application. In this way, it will be much easier for the visa officer to go through all your documents and to make a decision on it as quickly as possible. Once you've been given a visa, you will then come to Ireland. You are given a certain amount of time in which to come according to that visa. Once you enter into the airport, that visa is no longer valid and your passport is stamped then for either a month or 3 months. After that, you have to go through another process in Ireland after you register in UCD as well. All this can be explained to you and we can send you on a document about that. There is also information on the web in relation to that. If you want to then bring your documents into UCD, I think Sue might like to talk to you around the verification of those.
So you can, and it's best, we'd encourage where everyone has their original transcripts, don't send them into UCD. It's best to keep them with you when you travel and probably have them in your hand luggage just to make sure that they're safe. When you arrive then, you'll be able to identify the main administration building, which is called the Tierney building. There is a student desk, which will probably become a really important place for you to get to know. So you can go there with your documents, they'll be verified there. So the main thing is don't post them in, just bring them with you. And during the first kind of week of term, during your orientation, that's something that you can get done and get it out of the way. So there'll be no problem, you can bring them on arrival.
Perfect, thank you. So it's come to my attention that maybe the slides weren't working correctly in my presentation. So not to worry, what I'll do is I will email the presentation to all students. So you will receive that as well as the link to this session. So don't worry about that if you didn't view the presentation correctly. So I have another question here from Erica. So thank you very much for your question, Erica. And she is saying, hi, I was wondering when the International Student Handbook will be available. So I can maybe answer this question. The International Student Handbook will be available online within the next 2 weeks. And then when you arrive on campus in September, you will be given a copy of this if you come into the international office, and in September there will be copies made available here. So I would encourage all students to pop in and get a copy of that. You may receive it as part of your orientation pack as well, but if you don't, please do drop in and you'll get a copy of the handbook here in the office. So I'll move through some of these questions quite quickly. So this is a student who is asking, hello, I'll arrive in Dublin in July the 7th, and I was wondering if it's possible to register at UCD before August for visa purposes. So you haven't said what country you're from, so I don't know, it might be kind of tricky to answer it without all of that detail, but maybe Carl, you could speak about students arriving early.
Normally you won't be doing your registration in July, it'll be August. But I think the best thing you can do, if you're coming in July, I think it would be a good idea for you to come into UCD International, come into reception shortly after you arrive. We can have a look at how your passport has been stamped, because if your passport is stamped, which is normally done for 3 months, you'll have plenty of time in which to register with the immigration and to do your registration here as well. So the main thing is, don't panic and feel that you must go down on the 8th of July to register with the immigration authorities, because that won't be the case. So just come in to us and we'll check up things for you and we can advise you from there.
Perfect, thanks Carl. So I have a question from a student called Rachit, so thank you very much for your question. So I might direct this question at Mark. It's around accommodation. So this student is asking, hi, can we book accommodation before we get our visa? So maybe in terms of the visa, it's not essential, but maybe Mark could speak a little bit about the steps for on-campus accommodation for students.
Yeah. So just to note, for students coming into UCD, the two options that you have available to you are off-campus private accommodation, which you can arrange yourself, or the on-campus accommodation here on the Belfield campus. So in order to avail of the on-campus accommodation, an email will be sent out shortly to all students, which will outline the steps involved. In the meantime, you can look on the website to see the accommodation that's available. But basically, the accommodation will be allocated to students towards the end of June, after the 24th of June. But an email will be sent to all students outlining the steps that will be involved. But in the meantime, we would advise students to have a look on the website so that you're aware the accommodation available and the different prices of the different sizes of accommodation, and to just to make sure that you've maybe made your choice before the selections start to take place. The other option then is to go for off-campus accommodation, which some students prefer to look into. So this is where you rent a room in a house or an apartment, either sharing with friends or with other students. And we do offer some support to students who are looking for off-campus accommodation. So if you go to the UCD accommodation pad, you'll find they have listings of accommodation there that you can view through to look for. But we would keep in mind that to find accommodation off campus can be a lengthy process. Okay. So if that's the option that you're going for, to make sure that you start, give yourself plenty of time, maybe arrive up to 2 weeks before the start of term, and make arrangements for some short-term accommodation first of all. So you might book into a hostel or a cheap hotel nearby, so for maybe 2 weeks, to ensure that you have a safe place to stay while you're looking for your apartment. And that just reduces some panic and stress for yourself. So you know you have somewhere to stay for the first 2 weeks while you look. And then also we have our Facebook group for incoming students, where you can link up with other students who are looking for off-campus accommodation. So it might be easier to search together. But to go back, so in terms of on-campus, have a look through the UCD residence, the accommodation website, and instructions will be sent to all students on how to book your place.
Perfect, thank you, Mark. So I have another question from a student called Ankita. So Ankita is asking, hey, I have a conditional offer. My condition requires me to send in my final year mark sheet, but her final year mark sheet won't be available until the 10th of August, and she's just wondering, should she still apply for her visa? So maybe, Carl, you'd like to answer that question.
Well, yeah, you do need to have a firm offer in order to apply for the visa. So I would suggest that, first of all, you get your information in immediately it becomes available, which will be in early August. You have all your documents ready for the visa office. You have your letter written, as I said earlier, a very clear letter explaining exactly that you've paid fees, if you've fees paid, all of that information, have it all ready to go. and get it into the visa office as quickly as you can on the date that your results come in.
Perfect.
Okay.
So another question from a Smurfit student who is asking, can they stay on campus for 1 semester in the on-campus accommodation because they're doing a placement in the 2nd semester?
Usually, if you're in Smurfit, you book for the whole year. And I think that's something we might need to check as regards a Smurfit student. We occasionally have students who come for 1 semester, but that's something that's already organised in advance, and they're usually not the Smurfit students. So I think this is something that we might have to sort of take offline and have a look at for you.
Yes, absolutely. So I have a question from a student from Peru, another visa question, Carl. So
Yeah.
This student is asking, should they apply for a tourist visa and then when they get to UCD continue the visa process, or what should they do? So I think you'd be best placed to answer this one as well.
I have to say to you, absolutely not. You see, when you apply for a tourist visa, you're not asked for as many things as when you apply for a student visa. And the visa office wouldn't appreciate you going for a tourist visa to start off with. So if you've been offered a place in UCD, you apply for a student visa and you do all the necessary things that are required in order to get that. And that's one of the things being that you must have fees of 6,000 paid in advance. So don't do that, because that is not a good idea at all. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Carl. So there's quite a few visa questions coming in, so I'll just maybe keep talking about the answering these questions that the students are having. So Carissa has a question now. She doesn't say where she's from, but she's just asking when should she apply for her visa? When is the best time to apply before studying in Ireland, and to be there also in time for registration?
Okay. Well, Carissa, first of all, as we don't know where you're from, if you're from a visa required country, and remember there are differences. For example, if you're from North America, you don't require to have a visa coming into Ireland. If you're from India, if you're from Peru, you do require a visa, okay? So you should really start, if you've been offered, you should start now, because it can take 8 weeks, it can take more than 8 weeks, it depends how busy they are. So the sooner you start, the better. And one of the things, again, is to make sure that you pay your half fees. It's not enough, just everybody remember that. It isn't enough to have just the 500 deposit paid. The visa office won't accept that. They need to see that you've got 6,000 at least paid, okay?
Perfect. Thanks, Carl. So Anna has sent in a question asking around internships. So she said, are international students allowed to do their internship in Ireland? Again, I don't know what program you're coming to study, but maybe Sue, you might talk about internships that students are able to avail of on UCD programs.
Okay, it will depend on the program and level of study that you're doing. You'll see, I suppose, a lot of the, and a good strength of UCD is that a lot of the programs do offer some placements that are integrated with the level of study that you're doing. And these are in some really good companies and industries spread across Ireland, and sometimes even outside of Ireland, or of course in the USA. However, I would really again state that it is dependent on the program and subject to the level that you are studying at. Outside of that, it is sometimes up to the individual to seek an internship, and that might be through their own connections, or maybe by talking with some of the academics during their program of study, and sometimes even their own level of interest might drive them to seek other opportunities. And then, of course, there are some opportunities to, I suppose, apply for some different internships that might have more of a student-focused experience as well. So might need to look at what you are studying before I can clarify exactly what's there for you.
Great, thanks, Sue. So I have a question from an Indian student asking, when will they receive their UCD student card?
Yeah, I can take that. So the student card that we use here in UCD, we call it a U card. And this card is multifunctional and it's used for lots of purposes all through your time here at UCD. So you will receive your UCD U card when you arrive on campus. If you are staying in on-campus accommodation, you'll actually receive your U card when you check in. because your card also doubles as your key to your room. So you'll get it immediately as soon as you check into your apartment. Otherwise, if you're not staying on campus accommodation, you will receive your card during the orientation week. You will be notified of a time to collect it during the orientation week. And once you have your card, you have access to the library. It's used as a key for getting access into the library. It's also used for shopping on campus. So you can top up your U card with money, and you can use your card then when you're paying for meals in some of the restaurants or in some of the shops on campus. So it's a good way as well for parents maybe to ensure that students don't go hungry. They can top up their card with some money, and they know that that card can only be used on campus. So it's a great thing to have. It also acts as your official ID on campus. So you would use your card for when you're sitting your exams or assessment. This would be your formal ID. So it's very important to keep it. There is a charge if you lose it, if you have to get it renewed. In order to get your card, you have to ensure that you've completed your registration online, which we can talk about later again, and ensure that you've uploaded your photograph. So you have the power to upload your photograph to your online registration system, and that will be printed onto your card. So make sure that it's a nice clear photo, and because you will have this for the remainder of your time in UCD, so choose it wisely.
Great, thanks Mark. So I have a question from a student, Nick, who is asking, what do I do when I arrive in Dublin? So maybe we could speak a little bit about the UCD Airport Welcome that we organise for students who are arriving in September.
Yeah, so this year accommodation is opening on the 27th of August for students to check in, which is a little bit earlier than it has been in the past couple of years. We will be arranging airport welcomes, so there will be a UCD presence in the airport, and they'll probably be wearing green t-shirts. They'll be really identifiable, and they'll be there just to welcome students who are coming into Dublin Airport, and best direct them to either the air coach, which will transport them to their accommodation, the city centre or UCD, or maybe a taxi if that's what you'd like to do. They'll probably be there for the first couple of days of probably from maybe about the 28th of August. And usually they're there for about 4 or 5 days, but we're waiting to see when most students are likely to travel before we actually confirm the exact dates. And they're usually there from 8 a.m. till about 5 p.m. So if you do know when you're coming and you have a point of contact here in the international office, let us know, so at least we can see when students are likely to travel and when it's best to have our team there to help you. When you arrive in Dublin, make yourself known. When you can see the staff in the airport, just make yourself known and they'll give you information on what to do. And then depending on whether you're staying in short-term accommodation, like Mark mentioned, maybe you've booked into some temporary off-campus accommodation, get yourself settled there, and when you have the next opportunity, come here into UCD and you can probably make yourself known to our team here in the international office. We will be open from 9 to 5, and it will be very much our front door to come down to the international reception, and we'll help you to orientate yourself and let you know what you need to do next. If you're coming to stay on-campus accommodation, you will have received where you will be allocated your residence here on campus, and you'll be given details on how to get there. And so it's best to make yourself known to them, to the check-in desk. They'll give you your student card, and you'll be able to settle yourself into your on-campus accommodation. And then similarly, come into our office here and we'll tell you what's next to do.
Thanks, Sue. So I see some students are asking questions about graduate opportunities and can they stay and work in Ireland, and what opportunities are available to them. So we might talk a little bit about that, and then also some of the supports that the Career Development Centre also offer to students in UCD.
Okay, well, I'll talk about the third level graduate scheme, and then maybe my colleagues can talk about the rest of it. If you graduate from UCD, you're entitled to stay in Ireland. It's actually a really very good scheme. You can stay in Ireland for a year to look for work, or to work if you've already secured a job. And this is called the third level graduate scheme. And what it does, it extends your student permission to reside in Ireland for a further 12 months. You have to wait until you get your results. Sometimes people ask, can I go down immediately after I've completed my last part of the degree? But this is not the case. You have to wait for your official results, which in the case of master's students usually come out towards the end of October. And you go down then to the immigration office and with that information, and you can actually then get a new card to stay on for a full year. So it's a very good opportunity because it gives you a chance, if you get a job, to see how you get on with your employer, and the employer likewise to see how they get on with you without having to go through any of the work associated with applying for a green card or a work permit.
I think we also are asking a little bit about working when you're attending your program here in UCD. There are opportunities for students to work. Students are permitted to work up to 20 hours per week when they're registered to their program. We would recommend to kind of be careful when you're considering that. I wouldn't really be guaranteeing that as a definite, and that you'd be guaranteed to find work and part-time work when you're here. There are part-time jobs available, but bear in mind there's obviously a lot of other students and people who will be looking for those as well, and they might not suit the exact schedule of lectures and tutorials and labs that you might have. The key thing to note is that your priority is your academic program, and when you're coming here and investing in your course of study, you want to make sure that you're not doing anything that will kind of sacrifice I suppose the amount of time you can invest in it, and also the amount of time you can spend on campus using the facilities, meeting other students, and just kind of enjoying your time here at UCD. But it is there, just to note that you can work 20 hours.
Can I add to that from an immigration point of view, the immigration authorities expect that you will have enough money to come and that you're self-sufficient without having a recourse to part-time work. You know, for your own sake as well, I'd recommend that be the case, because first of all, as Sue said, there's no guarantee that you will get part-time work. And secondly, if you don't and you were reliant on that, it can cause a huge amount of stress for you, which can impact then on your studies. So be careful about that, because there really is no guarantee that you will get it, you know.
And I think especially for students who are doing 1 year taught masters, your program is very condensed over 3 semesters, and I think, you know, it is quite intensive. So I really would, you know, keep it in your mind when you're considering it, that you are going to have a lot of work when you're here, and you are going to want to spend your time also on campus and enjoying Dublin and enjoying Ireland. So it's just important to note. I think there is also an opportunity, just to say it, to work up to 40 hours, is that right, Carl?
Right,
at dedicated times outside
summer.
of the term times in the summer. So that's slightly different if you have, you know, time away from UCD and you're not required to study.
Thanks, guys. So I have another question from Pranesh. So thank you very much for your question, Pranesh. And Pranesh is asking, what are the recreational facilities available for students in UCD, in particular the Smurfit campus? So I might ask maybe Mark to speak a little bit about the facilities on campus.
Yeah. So it's important to note, so UCD actually has 2 campuses. Some people may not be aware. Our larger campus is where we are today. That's the Belfield campus. And we have a smaller campus, which is very close to here, which is the Smurfit Graduate Business School. So while the graduate business students will have their classes in the business campus, they have full access to all of the facilities here on the Belfield campus. So the main, I guess, attractions here are based within the brand new UCD Student Centre, which just opened about 2 years ago. This is a huge complex, completely dedicated just to fun, recreation, and relaxing and integrating and just getting to know other students. So within that building is the new 50-metre Olympic swimming pool. It also has the UCD Cinema, which is a great place to go and see movies with your colleagues or classmates. They're much cheaper than cinemas in the city centre, and it's just a nice place to hang out. Also in that building is the gym, which has the sauna and jacuzzis and steam rooms, all of these things that you can access and wind down after a busy day of classes. Also in there is the dance studios. There's the radio pod, where the student radio station broadcasts across campus every day, so you can find out what's happening. They also have the meeting rooms for all of the student societies. So we have over 60 or 70 student societies across campus, and these range across all kinds of interests. So whatever you're interested in at home, it's almost guaranteed you can find a group of students here in UCD who have a society that you can meet up with and get to know them through that society. And if a society doesn't exist, you can go ahead and set one up. Because if there's enough people interested in something. So we have the bigger societies would be some of the debating societies, but there's also the Indian Society is hugely active. The Drama Society holds shows every day in the new drama theatre that was built just 2 years ago again. Right down to the French Society, where you go and watch French movies and eat nice French bread, or there might be a German society that might arrange trips. So there's,
and most importantly, I have to remind the International Student Society.
Yeah.
And they also meet down on the Smurfit campus as well. They usually have a coffee afternoon once a week down there. So that's become a very, very big society. It's the 4th largest in UCD now. So I'm talking about that because I'm the senior treasurer of the International Student Society. And I know that they put on a lot of events and everything for the students, so it's well worth joining.
One other thing just to say about the campus, just was like what Mark was saying, one of the great things is the amount of space that you'll see when you get here. So you're actually coming to a campus that has the largest, it's the largest urban campus in Europe, and you'll see when you're walking around, it's so green, and you know, you have every sports kind of field, we have a stadium here, you know, there's woodland walks that are around the campus. So although we're only about 15 minutes from the city centre, you actually have a really nice environment to study, to live in, and just to kind of hang out with your friends. So it really has, I suppose, the best of both worlds, to be honest.
And Smurfit is also a very beautiful campus. There's some very old buildings, lots of lovely foliage, and just a few minutes walk from Smurfit is a lovely Blackrock village, which is really nice village. And down a bit further and you've got the sea, and you've got a train running by that brings you out to a number of different seaside resorts, just a little bit out from Dublin. So that is a really nice location to be in as well.
Great, thank you. So I have a question from Fernanda. So Fernanda is asking, hi, I'm Brazilian, and according to the website, I don't need a visa. Is there anything I need to do in relation to the visa or instead of a visa? So maybe Carl could speak a little bit about GNIB registration and all the things around that.
Yeah. Okay, so you don't need a visa to come into Ireland, but you are going to have to get a residence permit to remain in Ireland. The first thing is when you come to the airport, make sure that you have your offer letter with you. And if you've paid fees or you're getting a scholarship, as you may be doing from the Brazilian government, you can have those documents with you. In your hand luggage, don't have it in a case that you can't have access to. Because at the airport, all non-EU students will be streamed into a different category from the EU students, and their passports will be checked by an immigration official as you're going through. So in case they ask for anything more than the passport, it's good to have your documents with you. So then you're in Ireland, your passport is stamped at the airport. It's usually stamped for a month or 3 months. During that period, you have to do what's called registration with the Garda National Immigration Bureau. It's called the GNIB. And we usually organise evening registrations with them because it can be very busy down there. So if you're part of a cohort who have a coordinator in the international, in UCD International, you'll probably be allocated an evening to go down. If not, you can come in to the reception desk and check there to see if you can get an evening when you would go down to the Garda National Immigration Bureau. Now, what you have, one of the things that you need to do, you need to be able to show them that you have €3,000 in funds, okay? Now again, without knowing this, if you have a scholarship, you'll have a letter to say that you're actually funded, which will be sufficient. If you're private, all students will be expected to open a bank account anyway, because the immigration authorities like to see evidence of this. If you're a private student, you would want to have €3,000 in that bank account. When you arrive in UCD, You can come into the office, you can get information on opening a bank account. You can go over and open your bank account, and it will take about a week to 10 days for your bank card to come through and your bank account details, etc. So all of that can be done. The main thing to remember about registering with Garda, National Immigration Bureau, for all of the students is you don't have to rush down there the day after you arrive. You actually have time, and you have plenty of people here if you have any questions or you're concerned about it. So please don't rush down in the first few days, because there's no point. You won't fulfill the requirements for it anyway. And you need to have a certain amount of things in place, and you need to wait until you have those in place, okay?
Thanks, Carl. So thank you to everyone who's been sending in questions. Please keep them coming. I'm conscious of time, but we'll definitely try and get through as many as we can. But there's lots of questions here, so thank you very much for your questions. I see two questions from two students who are asking about, can families stay on campus? So both these students have families, and they're wondering if we provide accommodation for families. So maybe, Carl, do you want to speak a little bit about that and what the options are for families?
Unfortunately, we don't have family accommodation at the moment. So I would suggest, and again, now be careful, because depending on what course you're doing, where you're coming from, etc. It's not always possible to have your family with you. It's not a given that you can have them. It seems to be easier sometimes for people who are non-visa required. If you're a PhD student, for example, visa or non-visa required, you can usually have your family with you. But if you're an undergraduate student or you're a master's student, it's not absolute that the immigration authorities are agreeable to this. One of the things they would look at is what kind of funding you have to be able to support your family, because you and your family cannot be a burden on the state. So I think it would be important to remember that. To go on to the question of accommodation, it's a case, we often recommend to people that the person who's the student travel in advance of the family, and they look for accommodation off campus, and when they've found it, the family can come over afterwards, because that cuts down on the stress levels if the whole family are there trying to go around looking for accommodation.
Perfect, thanks, Carl. So there are still a lot of questions coming in around accommodation, so I might go through some of these now. So this is a question from Kushil, who's asking, hi, if we do get on-campus accommodation, how early do we need to be there? So how early can they arrive and check into on-campus accommodation?
So the accommodation will be opening from the 27th, which is earlier this year than usual. So that's going to give students a chance to settle in and make sure that they're fully comfortable. Now, you don't need to check in on that date. That will be the first date it's available. So unfortunately, if you arrive before that date, you won't be able to check in. But anytime after the 27th of August, you'll be able to check in. We would advise students to arrive in time for the orientation week, which will be starting on the Monday just after. So that will be around the 1st of September. So it's important to make sure that you're here for the orientation week, so that you're getting to all of the events and getting to your academic advisory sessions as well, so that you're fully ready to start class the following week. So, but in terms of accommodation, it would be from the 27th, you'll be able to book in, to check in.
Great, thanks, Mark. So I have a question from Wahid, and Wahid is saying, hi, I'm from Nigeria and I've gotten my visa to study MSc Computer Science. I've booked a hotel for my first 3 days in Dublin, and I intend on getting an apartment after that. Will this be accepted at the port of entry? So maybe, Carl, you could speak about students arriving in the airport and what they should have with them.
Yeah, again, I think you have obviously your offer letter, which is very important. You have your passports, which has been stamped with the visa. Bring your evidence of fees paid as well. It's no harm to have it. They may not ask for it, but have it with you. And have your evidence of the fact that you're staying in that accommodation. You'll obviously have the booking documentation for the hotel, and you can explain what you're doing in relation to looking for off-campus accommodation. And I think that should be sufficient once you have all your documentation.
Great, thanks, Carl. So I have a question from a student, which it comes up quite regularly when UCD staff travel to some of our markets. So this student is asking, what is Dublin like to live in, and what is the weather like? So who wants to answer this question?
Probably old shit. You know.
The weather today is very nice. It's quite warm by our standards. It's sunny, and it's there's a nice little breeze, and it's very, very mild and very nice. But in 5 minutes' time, it could rain. So the weather in Ireland changes a lot. It keeps everything exciting and dramatic. So it does rain a little bit now and then, but it's nothing to worry about. All of the campus has walkways where it's easy to get around without getting wet. But it is important when you're coming to make sure you bring appropriate clothes. So all of us will always have a rain jacket nearby or an umbrella just in case. So it means you can get on your day without worrying about the weather getting in your way. But during the summertime, it's nice and mild, it's nice and warm. It doesn't become very extreme, it doesn't get very hot. And then in the winter time, it gets a little colder, but again, it doesn't get very extreme. So we get a little bit of snow for maybe 1 week, if even, in the winter time.
Not always,
around Christmas time. But it doesn't get very extreme either way. But just to be ready that it may rain, and to bring a rain jacket. If you don't have one, you can buy one very cheap.
I think a good idea is to consider dressing in layers, because that kind of some days you will find that it gets warm and then it's cold. So if you have a t-shirt and a sweater and you have a jacket as well, it's probably the way to go. And I recommend for the winter that people have a hat, because they say that the heat goes out through the top of your head. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it's a good idea to have all of these kind of things. And then, because it depends again what part of the world you come from. If you come from Canada, you're well used to having some really cold weather. And if you come from Nigeria or Zambia, as mentioned already, you might find that it's quite cold over here and it takes a bit of getting used to. So I think you'd be prepared. One of the beauties of it is that because we don't have extremes of heat, you can actually explore Dublin, walking around everywhere, because you can always dress for the cold, but you can't fully sort of get away from intense heat. And that's the beauty of it, that you can walk a lot and get to know the place very well.
And I think they're also asking what Dublin is like to live in. So I think Carl mentioned it's a great city to explore. So Dublin itself is a really vibrant cosmopolitan city. It has quite a young population. And you'll see when you go into Dublin City, where we're about 10 to 15 minutes on a bus ride away from the city centre. When you go into the city centre, it is very easy to walk around, to get to know it. There will be walking tours built in on offer for you to kind of avail of during orientation, so that you can actually become familiar with the city. But you'll see that there's lots of, I suppose, businesses, industries, lots of shopping, lots of cafes, restaurants, lots of things for you to do. But it's also small enough that you'll feel very at home, and it's very safe for you to walk around. So it is a great environment to study, and also to kind of supplement having an opportunity to make new connections and meet new friends and have a little bit of a taste of the city centre when you're not here on the campus.
Perfect, thank you everyone. So I see a question from Shavari, who has a conditional offer for MSc Biotech and Business, and Shavari is just wondering, if they don't meet the conditions of offer, if they get a lower GPA, what should they do, or who should they contact? So maybe we could talk a little bit about conditional offers and meeting conditions, and the process involved in that.
Okay. I suppose there are different conditions on people's offers. So there are students who are waiting to submit their academic results, be that from a high school or an international exam, or else from your undergraduate degree. So as soon as you get those, upload them onto the application system, and they'll come to our attention so we can take a look at them. Usually the conditions must be met on your offer. So where you have not met the academic conditions, unfortunately it's likely that the offer won't actually turn into an unconditional offer. If you want to come back to us and look for further information, we will of course liaise with the schools and colleges to see if there's any extra consideration that can be met in relation to the academic conditions, but they are all set in advance of each year of entry. So we have to say that there's I suppose it's unlikely that there's huge flexibility given in that. When you're in relation to English language, it's quite clear the English language entry requirements that must be met as well. So there is an opportunity for students to take their English language exam up to quite a late stage throughout the summer before submitting it. That's subject to students who are from a non-visa required country. So bear in mind, if you are needing to give yourself 8 weeks to apply for a visa, you must submit those in advance of that. For those students who have paid a deposit and are holding a conditional offer and don't meet the conditions, you will be able to get 90% of that deposit back. So there is a 10% administration fee that is taken. But again, if it's on your academic conditions, they're usually outlined in your offer. We will, of course, double check if you really want us to double check with the school, we can check that for you.
Great, thank you. So I see some students are asking questions around living costs in Ireland. So we might just talk a little bit about the cost of living in Ireland.
So it's difficult, as I said, to put an exact figure on it, because it's really down to what type of accommodation you choose and what kind of lifestyle you want to have for yourself. As Sue mentioned, Dublin is a very exciting and cosmopolitan and dynamic city. So there's lots of ways to spend your money if you'd like to, but there's also lots of ways to keep your spending low and to live on a nice budget. So we would recommend to students that it would cost approximately €1,000 per month to live. That would be for accommodation and for your food and your living expenses. Now, it might be a little higher than that or a little lower, depending on how strict and rigid you are with yourself. But we would give advice to all students when they arrive, which gives information about local supermarkets where you can shop very cheaply and get really good food quite cheaply. We also would give information on some cafes and restaurants in the city which do good deals for students. Also, as a student with your student card, you often get discounts in a lot of shops. So for clothing, you can often get a discount just by showing your student card. For travel, you can get a special student travel card, which gives huge discounts for buses and trains. So that's a huge advantage. So there's lots of ways, clever tips that we have on our website, and that you can talk to us here when you arrive, and we'll give you information. And that can keep your expenses down. But you do have to be clever, and you have to make sure that you're aware of how not to get caught spending money where it's not needed.
And bicycle is also another way of cutting down your price, especially if you're off campus. There is a bike shop on campus, and you can actually buy a bike from them, and at the end of your course you can go in and sell the bike back to them again. So that's a good way of keeping down costs if you're traveling in and out to the campus all day. Also, there's a lot of our museums and that, they don't actually charge in. So that's another way of entertaining yourself by going around to these places, because they don't charge. Lots of free events, yeah.
And even here on campus, there's loads of events that we run by the society.
Yeah.
So rather than always going into the city centre, really see what's happening here. There's always things going on. Outside of orientation week, there's always things going throughout the year that'll be up on the calendar of events. So, a lot of those will be free admission and just for you to participate in. And they're a great way to get to know the students. So, look around you to see what's near first, just to enjoy it.
Great, thank you. So a question from Carol. This is around registration, so I might direct this to Mark. So Carol is asking, do we have to take our original documents for the registration, such as the bachelor's degree, English exam, TOEFL, etc., or is it enough with simple copies? So maybe if you could just talk a little bit about the registration process again, Mark, and what's involved in that.
So in UCD, all of your registration is online. So, and it comes in 2 stages. So the first, or phases, the first phase will take place in August. And this is where you accept that the terms and conditions of being a student in UCD. It's also where you double check all of your personal details. If you have your Irish address confirmed, it's where you would update that on your profile. And it's also where you upload your photograph, which will be later used for your student card that we talked about earlier. So that's phase 1 of your registration. And that's done online. So for that part, you don't need any documents. It's purely a case of going onto your student account, your UCD Connect account, and you do that by logging on the homepage of UCD with your username, which is your student number, which you'll have by now, and also your date of birth is your password. And in Ireland, we go, the date of birth is the day, the month, and the year. So if your date of birth is the 1st of February 1985, it will be 01/02/85. So that's how you log into your UCD Connect account, and you'll see very clear there'll be a huge banner where you click to start registration. Information about when to do that will be emailed. It's phased for students on different programs, but it will be during August generally. So that's phase 1. And the second phase then will happen later in August, and that's your module registration. So for this varies from program to program, but generally your modules, you will have some core modules which are automatically assigned to you, and you'll be automatically registered to those. And then depending on your program, you may have some option modules or elective modules. So in your phase 2 of registration, you can choose those modules and select the times and do all of that. So that, again, that will be explained to you through email over the coming weeks. The registration in terms of your physical documents, this can be done later during the year. You should bring, as Sue said, you should bring all relevant documents with you, the official original documents. So if you have completed a bachelor and undergraduate degree, you should bring the official certificate and also all of the transcripts. If you're not sure, we'd always advise to bring them. It's much easier to have them here and keep them safe and bring them home with you again, rather than trying to arrange for them to be posted later. So if you're not sure about a document, we'd always advise to bring it with you, because it may be asked for at some stage, and it could cause you some stress trying to have that posted later. So bring everything with you. You don't need to post anything in advance. Just bring the physical documents with you, and keep an eye on all of the information being sent to you about your online registration.
I think that's really important. Your email account for the time being is going to be your access to lots of different information coming from UCD. So really, as Mark said, keep an eye on what's coming in. There'll be registration information. There'll be information on kind of orientation and pre-departures. There's lots of different things. So make sure you're just keeping an eye on it and monitoring it and following the steps and the deadlines on those steps when you see them. If you have an issue on the deadlines, contact our team and let us know what they are, and we'll do our best to try to help you with them. So really do keep an eye on your email account over the next couple of months.
Great. So there's a question from Samaya Joshi, who I know quite well from India, one of the Indian students, and he is asking, is there any positions for part-time work in the university? For example, is there any position for becoming a lab demonstrator or a tutor? And there are from students asking if there's any assistance in does the university provide any assistance in looking for part-time jobs?
Yeah, it's a funny one, really. We don't have a sort of a part-time job office, because I suppose for the most part we're encouraging people not to be having part-time jobs. Having said that, there are a few. The Students' Union, for example, employs some students to work in their shops. The restaurant occasionally employs students to work in the restaurant here. On an individual basis, sometimes if people have particular qualifications when they come in here, they can get work, maybe even tutoring in some areas, but it's more a case of when you get into your particular course, if you have an expertise, you would be talk to the people in that course, and they might be able to take you in as a tutor or a demonstrator. Occasionally, a lot of PhD students would act as tutors or demonstrators. Generally speaking, the undergraduates wouldn't, not normally at all. Master's students occasionally but it's generally PhD students will act as tutor demonstrators.
There can be opportunity to work with some of the offices around the campus, maybe as a tour guide.
Yeah.
Small jobs like this, but we wouldn't. We would advise people not to be, I guess, depending on any of these part-time jobs as a source of funding or to support your living expenses. Any part-time work that you might find on campus would be very part-time, and it really wouldn't support you. So it's just important to keep in mind that you should budget in advance to make sure that you're comfortable to live for the year or however long it is, without having the pressure on yourself to try and find employment, because it may happen, but it may not.
Absolutely. I'm conscious of time, so maybe we have just time for maybe 2 more questions. So this is a question from Paolo, so I might ask Carl to answer this one. Is the offer letter received by email suitable for immigration at the airport? And would the evidence of tuition fees paid extracted from SysWeb be suitable for the same purpose?
Yes, both of those should be acceptable. Now, once the offer letter is an attachment, as a proper offer letter, not just a line saying that you're coming, because the immigration authorities don't like that. So it would be important to have something that looks a bit more official. Once you have a receipt, again, a lot of the time at the airport, they won't actually ask to see the fees paid. But I always think it's a good idea to have that, like we were talking earlier about having your documentation for UCD as well. It's better to have too much than too little. So, and again, anybody coming from the United States, if you haven't paid your fees because you're getting US financial aid, bring the evidence of that as well. If your fees are coming in later, straight into UCD, okay.
Bring everything.
Yeah.
It's important to note that you won't receive a physical offer letter. So if you're waiting for a physical offer letter in the post, it's not going to come.
Yes.
You can access your offer letter, your official formal offer letter, through your online application system. So once you've received an offer, you'll see offer letter appearing in a blue box on your application, and you click that, and that's where you receive that's your formal offer that you print, and that's fully acceptable. So there won't be a physical hard copy.
And that will be updated as if you're making any changes. So it's conditional at the moment and subject to you meeting those and then being uploaded and approved, that automatically then gets changed to your unconditional offer letter. So that will always be as up to date as your application is.
Great. So maybe we'll just have one more question. So this is a question from AJ, and he's wondering, who should he stay in contact with if he has any specific questions about registration and visas, etc. in the university? So maybe, Sue, you could talk a little bit about the points of contact in the UCD Global Centres and also in the international office, and maybe even talk a little bit about the programme offices and school supports as well.
Yeah, so I think you'll see from, and hopefully throughout your application, you've seen that there's plenty of different contexts that you can avail of. And if we can't answer your question, we certainly liaise with our colleagues and give you the answer that you need as soon as we can. So we have the UCD International team here in Dublin. So if you're on our website, you'll see a tab that says Meet Our Team, and you'll be able to see all of our faces and the type of role that we have on our email addresses. So you can contact the UCD International team. You can contact, if you're coming from a region where we have a global centre, so we have a global centre in Beijing, in Delhi, in Southeast Asia, that's situated in Malaysia, and we also have one in New York, in the USA. So there's a couple of different points of contact. You can go straight to the global centre, they're operating in your time zone, or you might actually be in the vicinity and you want to call down to them. If it's a little bit more detailed in relation to academic issues, you can contact your programme coordinator or maybe the school office. And if you're not sure where best to direct it, you can contact international@ucd.ie, and we can certainly field it to the right contact for you to follow up with.
Absolutely. So I think we will wrap things up now for this Google Hangout session. I'm sorry we didn't get through all of the questions. I will get back to all of the students who have asked questions directly by email, but just to draw your attention that we will be organising pre-departure sessions in country. So I would direct you to the UCD International website to see when UCD staff are travelling over the next few months for physical pre-departure sessions. And also we'll be organising another Google Hangout within the next few weeks for a pre-departure also. So please do join us for that. And I do want to thank my panel for answering all of your questions. And thank you very much for logging into our session today. Thank you.
Thank you.